I decided to drive alone through one of the most economically struggling regions in America. No script. No appointments. No idea who I would meet. Just winding mountain roads, fading coal towns, and stories waiting behind quiet front porches. This is Eastern Kentucky. A place where coal once built fortunes, where trains used to roar through valleys, carrying black rock that powered the country. And where today, many towns sit still. People warned me before I came. They said outsiders are noticed immediately. They said folks here protect their land. They said some roads are better left unturned. But they also said something else. They said if someone trusts you here, they will treat you like family. So I crossed into a small town that barely has one main street, one traffic light, a few dollar stores, a gas station, and long stretches of silence. This county has faced decades of job loss. When coal declined, so did everything else. No hospital, very few businesses, young people leaving for cities. The mountains are beautiful, but beauty doesn't always mean opportunity. I parked near an old brick building that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1940s. Paint peeling. Windows dusty. A faded sign still hanging above the door. A man was sitting outside playing a small wooden flute. He looked up at me carefully. Out here, people study you before they speak. I introduced myself. He told me he was just trying to earn a few dollars before his disability check arrived. He said life here is simple. Some people do well. Some barely get by. He said most folks just try to survive the month. When I asked what changed the most over the years, he didn't hesitate. Jobs. He said when the mines closed, everything slowed down. Stores closed, families moved. The energy faded. Still, he told me something important. He said this place may look forgotten, but the people are not. And that stuck with me. I thanked him and kept driving deeper into the hills. The road narrowed. Signal disappeared. Mountains closed in around both sides. Houses started appearing tucked into what locals call hollers. Small clusters of homes at the end of winding roads. It felt like stepping into a different pace of America. Slower. Quieter. More guarded. I didn't know it yet, but the real stories were waiting just ahead. The deeper I drove into the mountains, the quieter everything became. No billboards, no chain restaurants, no traffic. Just trees, hills, and the occasional mailbox leaning beside a narrow gravel road. In places like this, homes aren't lined up in neighborhoods. They're scattered. One house might sit at the bottom of a hill, another halfway up the mountain, another hidden completely behind trees. I passed an old gas station that looked closed for years. The sign was faded. The pumps looked frozen in time. A reminder that something once moved here. Now it mostly stands still. I stopped near a small convenience store that looked like the only active business for miles. Two young men were standing outside beside a pickup truck. They watched me before I even stepped out of my car. Out here, people notice everything. I walked over slowly and introduced myself. At first, they were short with their answers. Where are you from? What are you doing here? Questions that weren't aggressive, but cautious. When I explained I was just traveling and wanting to understand life in this region, their posture softened. One of them laughed and said, "There ain't much to understand. We just live." He offered to show me around for a bit. We climbed into his truck and turned off the main road into a narrow holler. The pavement disappeared. Gravel crunched beneath the tires. He told me almost everyone here owns a gun, not because they're looking for trouble, but because that is a host or it has always been protection. Tradition. Hunting. In these mountains, independence is everything. He pointed to a few homes and said most of the families have lived here for generations. Grandparents, parents, children, same land, same hills. Then his tone shifted. He admitted that drugs have changed things. Methamphetamine has hit this region hard. He said when jobs disappeared, some people lost direction. Idle time mixed with hopelessness can become dangerous. He told me he grew up around addiction. His parents struggled with it. He was raised mostly by his grandparents, but he said something powerful. Just because it's around you doesn't mean it has to be you. He works long hours now, not because jobs are easy to find, but because staying busy keeps him focused. We passed an old coal structure barely standing, rust eating away at metal beams. Windows broken, nature slowly reclaiming what industry left behind. He said at one time, this area was alive. Miners filled the streets. Paychecks supported local shops. Kids had places to work after school. Now most of those opportunities are gone. He asked me what cities are like. Los Angeles, New York. I told him they're busy. Fast. Expensive. He nodded, but didn't seem impressed. He said he might visit one day, but he doesn't feel pulled toward it. This is home, he said. Even with the struggles, even with the limited opportunities. This is home. As we drove back toward the main road, I realized something important. From the outside, this place might look forgotten, but inside these hills, there's pride. There's loyalty, and there are stories most people will never hear. And I was just getting started. As we left the gravel road and merged back onto the highway, the sun started dipping behind the mountains. The hills turned dark blue. The sky burned orange for a few brief minutes. And then it was just quiet again. Out here, nighttime feels different. There aren't streetlights every few blocks. There aren't neon signs glowing in the distance. When the sun goes down, it really goes down. Andrew dropped me back at my rental car, and before leaving he said something that stuck with me. People think we're backwards, but they don't know us. Then he drove off. I sat there for a moment thinking about that. In big cities, people judge rural America. In rural America, people distrust big cities. Two completely different worlds inside the same country. I decided to stop at one more place before heading north. A small roadside bar with dim lights and pickup trucks parked outside. The kind of place where everyone inside probably knows each other. When I walked in, conversations paused for a split second. Not hostile. Just curious. Who's this guy? I grabbed a seat at the bar and introduced myself to a man sitting beside me. He looked to be in his early 40s. Work boots. Rough hands. He told me he used to work in coal. When the mines shut down, he bounced between construction jobs. Now he drives nearly an hour each way just to make steady income. Used to be you could raise a whole family on coal money, he said. Now you're lucky to keep the lights on. He wasn't angry. Just realistic. Another man chimed in from behind us. He said the hardest part isn't the money. It's watching young people leave. High school graduates pack up and move to Lexington, Knoxville, Nashville. They chase opportunity, and most don't come back. That leaves aging parents, empty houses, shrinking towns. But despite that, there was laughter in the bar. A group playing pool in the corner. Someone joking loudly near the jukebox. It wasn't depressing. It was simple. These weren't people sitting around waiting for life to change. They were making the best of what they had. One of the men asked me if I was scared driving around here alone. I admitted that I was at first. You hear stories. You read stereotypes. But so far, everyone I met had been kind. Cautious at first, but Candy nodded and said, "We protect our own." That's all. Protection here doesn't always mean aggression. It means loyalty. Family first. Neighbors second. If you're respectful, you're usually welcomed. After a while, I stepped outside. The air was cold and crisp. No city noise, no traffic hum, just crickets and distant wind through trees. It hit me that isolation here isn't just physical. It's economic. It's digital. It's cultural. When industries disappear and nothing replaces them, communities feel it for generations. But something else survives too. Resilience. These towns may be struggling financially, but the people aren't broken. They're adapting. Some through work. Some through faith. Some through tight community bonds. As I got back in my car to continue north, I realized this journey wasn't about poverty statistics. It wasn't about stereotypes. It was about faces. Voices. Stories hidden between mountain roads. And there was still more road ahead. By the time I reached the next county line, it was fully dark. The road signs were barely visible. The GPS signal kept cutting in and out. Out here, you don't just lose service, you lose connection to everything. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just you and the road. I pulled into a gas station that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1980s. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. 2 pumps. A faded Pepsi sign. Inside, there were 3 men drinking coffee at a small plastic table. They looked up when I walked in. Not unfriendly, just measuring me. I grabbed a bottle of water and started a conversation. One of them told me he used to drive trucks across multiple states. Now he works part-time at a sawmill. The pay isn't great, but it keeps him close to home. Family matters more than money, he said. Another man laughed and added, money still matters, though. They all nodded. We talked about jobs. Manufacturing used to be strong here. Lodging, too. Now most of the young guys either commute long distances or leave altogether. One of them told me something interesting. People think we're poor because we don't have big houses. But a lot of folks here own their land. That hit different. In cities, people rent tiny apartments for thousands of dollars. Out here, you might have less cash, but you have property that's been in your family for generations. Different kind of wealth. As I stepped back outside, a pickup truck rolled in fast. 2 teenagers jumped out laughing. Music blasting. For a second, it looked just like any small town in America. That's the thing about this place. It's not one story. It's not just addiction. It's not just poverty. It's kids hanging out at gas stations. It's old men telling stories. It's families holding onto land. It's complicated. I drove deeper into the hills again. The road narrowed. Houses became trailers. Trailers became small wooden cabins. Some homes looked abandoned. Others had porch lights on and fresh trucks parked outside. I slowed down near one narrow driveway. There was a man sitting on the hood of his truck, smoking quietly. I rolled my window down and introduced myself. He was in his late 20s. Worked night shifts at a warehouse about 45 minutes away. He said he tried living in the city once. Didn't last 6 months. Too loud. Too crowded, he said. Out here, he knows everyone. If his truck breaks down, someone stops. If his grandma needs groceries, neighbors check on her. That kind of network doesn't show up in statistics. We talked about stereotypes again. He said people online call Appalachia uneducated. But he pointed to his phone and said, we see the world too. He follows news. He invests small amounts in crypto. He watches global politics. The world isn't as far away as it used to be. Before leaving, he told me something simple. Most of us aren't stuck here. We choose here. That sentence changed the tone of the whole trip. Yes, there's struggle. Yes, there's limited opportunity. But for some, this isn't a trap. It's home. And home has value that money can't measure. As I drove away, the mountains surrounded the road like shadows. No city skyline. No giant billboards. Just winding asphalt through quiet land. I realized something. Southeastern Kentucky isn't just America's poorest region. It's one of its most misunderstood. The deeper I drove, the quieter it became. No street lights. No traffic. Just darkness wrapped around the mountains. Every few miles, I would pass a single house. A porch light glowing. A dog barking in the distance. Out here, silence is normal. In the city, silence feels uncomfortable. Here, it feels natural. I turned down a narrow road that barely looked paved. It curved sharply along the side of a hill. At the bottom, I saw a small trailer with smoke rising from a chimney. An older man was stacking firewood outside. I pulled over slowly. He looked up, didn't smile, didn't frown. Just waited. I introduced myself and told him I was traveling through, trying to understand life out here. He nodded and leaned against his truck. I've lived here 72 years, he said. Same land, same mountains. His father worked in the coal mines. So did he. When the mines shut down, everything changed. He didn't say it with anger. He said it like someone describing the weather. Just fact. He told me when he was young, the town was packed. Stores open late. Kids playing everywhere. Money moving through the community. Now, most of the young ones leave. His grandson moved to Tennessee, his granddaughter to Ohio. They send pictures, he said quietly. He misses them, but he won't leave. This is my dirt. That phrase stuck with me. My dirt. We talked about money. He lives mostly off Social Security. He grows vegetables in the summer, cuts his own wood for heat. His expenses are low. He doesn't owe anyone anything. No mortgage, no car payment. In his mind, that's freedom, not wealth. Freedom. As I got back in my car, I realized something important. Poverty looks different depending on how you measure it. If you measure by income, this region ranks near the bottom. If you measure by land ownership, family roots, community familiarity, it tells a more complex story. I kept driving north. The road climbed higher into the hills. Eventually, I reached a small overlook. I stepped out of the car. The air was cold and clean. You could see layers of mountains fading into darkness. No city glow on the horizon. Just stars. More stars than most Americans ever see. It was beautiful. And for a moment, it didn't feel poor at all. That's the contradiction here. Struggle and beauty exist side by side. Limited opportunity and deep belonging. Addiction and recovery. Isolation and strong community ties. This place is not simple. It's not a headline. It's not just statistics. It's people. People trying to get by. People trying to stay sober. People trying to hold on to family land. As I drove back toward the main highway, I thought about something one of the locals told me earlier. Everybody loves everybody. Te Houston, te trust outsiders. After today, I understood that better. Trust isn't automatic here. It's earned. But once it's given, it's real. Southeastern Kentucky may be labeled as America's poorest region, but it's also one of the most resilient, and resilience doesn't show up on income charts. The next morning, I started the engine before sunrise. Fog sat low in the valleys. The mountains looked softer in the early light. It felt peaceful. Too peaceful for a place people often describe as dangerous or hopeless. I stopped at a small gas station off the highway. Inside, a woman behind the counter greeted me like she had known me for years. "Where are you headed?" I told her I was leaving the region. She smiled. "Come back sometime." Simple words, but they felt genuine. That's something I noticed here. Hospitality isn't loud. It's quiet. It shows up in small ways. A free refill of coffee. Directions given patiently. A stranger offering to help if your car breaks down. Driving toward Lexington. I thought about the people I met. The older man who lost his family in the fire. The young guy, raised by his grandparents. The wandering local everyone somehow knows by name. The bartender who believes in second chances. Each story carried weight, and none of them fit neatly into a stereotype. From the outside, it's easy to reduce this region to 3 words. Coal, poverty, drugs. Those things exist. They are real, but they are not the whole story. You drive until the billboards fall away, and the highways narrow into 2-lane roads that snake through the mountains. Here, the world slows down. This is a part of America many have forgotten, a place held together by pride, faith, and the deep roots of family. I came here not to judge, but to listen, to see the lives lived in the shadows of these rolling hills. In a small town, where the main street has more memories than businesses, I met a pastor. His hands were calloused from work, not just prayer. He told me, "We're not looking for a handout. We're looking for a hand up." He spoke of a loyalty so fierce, it's almost a religion. A bond to the land where generations are buried in the same soil. This isn't just dirt and rock. It's identity. To leave is to uproot your own history. But the young ones face a difficult choice. Stay, and you might face a future with few jobs outside the Dollar General. A future where addiction whispers from the hollows. Leave, and you risk losing a part of yourself. That connection to the only home you be. Eberkno. I saw a young man, no older than 20, staring out at the mountains. He said, "Everything I love is here, but everything I want to be is somewhere else." It's the heartbreak of this place. A tug-of-war between belonging and becoming. On Sunday, I sat in the back of a small roadside church. The paint was peeling, but the voices inside were strong, singing hymns that have echoed through these valleys for 100 years. It's more than just religion. It's community. It's the potluck after the service, the shared stories, the comfort of knowing you're not alone in your struggles. This is the glue that holds everything together when the economy has fallen apart. They've lost the mines, the factories, the promises of progress. But they haven't lost each other. People here are tired of being a headline, a statistic in a story about poverty or politics. They are miners, sons, and farmers, daughters, fiercely independent people who know how to survive. They don't want your pity. They want you to see them, to understand that their world, with its quiet rhythms and deep-seated traditions, has value. It's a different kind of wealth, one not measured in dollars, but in resilience. As I drove away, back toward the highways and the billboards, I realized this place isn't dying. It's fighting. It's a quiet, stubborn fight for identity in a country that's racing forward. The people here are a testament to the idea that progress isn't always about moving on. Sometimes it's about holding on to what matters most. They are the keepers of a story that America needs to hear. A story of strength, of faith, and of the enduring power of home. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more journeys into the heart of our world. By the time I reached the interstate, the contrast felt sharp. 4 wide lanes, bright gas stations, fast food chains glowing in the distance. It almost felt like I had crossed into a different country. Just an hour earlier, I was driving through winding hollers with no signal. Now I was surrounded by traffic and commercial lights, but my mind was still back in the mountains. I kept thinking about something the young guy at the Dollar General said. People think we don't know what's out there. We just choose this. That sentence stayed with me. From the outside, it's easy to assume that staying in a struggling region means you're trapped. But for many, it's a decision tied to land. 2 grandparents, 2 childhood memories. Opportunity is important, but belonging is powerful. The more I reflected, the more I realized that this region isn't defined by poverty alone. Yes, median incomes are low. Yes, job options are limited. Yes, addiction has left scars. But there's another layer most people don't see. People grow their own food, fix their own vehicles, heat their homes with wood they cut themselves. There's a quiet independence that doesn't show up in economic reports. And then there's community. In cities, neighbors sometimes don't even know each other's names. Out here, if your truck breaks down, someone stops. If your house catches fire, the entire town shows up. I saw that in the way people talked about each other. They might argue, they might gossip, but they protect their own. I thought about the older man who said, "This is my dirt." That phrase represents something deeper. Ownership, not just of property, but of identity. These mountains shape people. The terrain is rugged. The winters are cold. The jobs are hard, and over time, that creates resilience. Not flashy resilience, not inspirational quotes on social media. Just quiet endurance. Keep going. Work when work is available. Help your neighbor. Survive another season. At the same time, the challenges are real. If you're young and ambitious, you might feel limited. If you're struggling with addiction, resources are scarce. If you want specialized healthcare, you drive hours. There are gaps here. Gaps in infrastructure. Gaps in opportunity. Gaps in investment. And those gaps matter. But what surprised me most wasn't the struggle. It was the pride. No one I met asked for sympathy. They didn't beg for outsiders to fix everything. They just wanted to be understood fairly, not painted with one brush, not reduced to a stereotype. As I merged fully into highway traffic, I realized something simple. This part of America isn't loud. It doesn't trend on social media. It doesn't dominate headlines unless something bad happens. But it exists. It breathes. It survives quietly between mountains. And sometimes, the quiet places tell the most honest stories. The highway carried me farther away from the mountains, but the conversations replayed in my head. Every voice sounded different. Different ages, different struggles, different outlooks. But one theme connected them all. Stay strong, not in a motivational poster way, in a practical way. Pay the bills, fix what's broken. Take care of family. That's the rhythm of life there. As the landscape flattened and the towns grew bigger, I kept comparing the two worlds. In cities, opportunity is everywhere. Jobs, universities, hospitals, airports. But so is pressure, high rent, competition, isolation in crowded places. In the mountains, opportunity is limited, but so are distractions. No endless nightlife. No corporate rush, just community and routine. Neither is perfect. They're just different. One of the most powerful moments from the trip wasn't dramatic. It was simply an older man stacking wood, a young guy working long shifts to stay away from trouble, a store clerk saying, "Most people just pass through." That sentence still echoed in my mind. Most people pass through. Maybe that's part of the problem. We pass through places without listening. We form opinions without conversations. We reduce complex communities to headlines. But when you slow down, when you sit and talk, the picture becomes layered. Addiction here isn't a character flaw. It's often tied to economic decline, to generational hardship, to pain without access to treatment. At the same time, recovery stories exist too. People fighting back, people choosing work over chaos, people breaking cycles their parents couldn't escape. There's something deeply human about that. Before this trip, I wondered if I would feel unsafe driving through these hollers alone. I heard warnings. I imagined worst-case scenarios. But what I experienced was caution, not hostility. Suspicion at first. Respect once trust was built, and that's fair. If you live in a place constantly judged from the outside, you protect it. That protection doesn't make people bad. It makes them defensive. As I approached Lexington, traffic thickened again. The skyline appeared in the distance. Restaurants, hotels, bright lights, modern convenience. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something important lives in those quiet mountains. Something raw. Something grounded. It's easy to overlook places that aren't flashy. But sometimes the most overlooked places hold the most honest reflections of a country. Eastern Kentucky may struggle economically, but it holds history. It holds great. It holds families who have survived decades of change. And maybe that survival story matters more than any statistic. Because at the end of the day, America isn't just built in skyscrapers. It's built in small towns. In hollers, in quiet communities that keep going, even when the spotlight isn't on them. And that's a story worth telling, fairly. There was one more conversation I kept replaying in my mind. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve tragedy or statistics. It was, simply, a young man leaning against his truck, looking out over the hills, saying, "We're not stuck. We just don't need much." That line reshaped everything. In cities, success is often measured in upgrades, bigger apartment, newer car, higher salary, constant motion forward. But in the mountains, success can look different. A paid-off piece of land, a truck that runs, food in the fridge, family nearby. That's enough. Not everyone dreams of skyscrapers. Some dream of stability, some dream of peace. And in a strange way, that simplicity feels radical in modern America. Because modern America rarely slows down. It demands more. More productivity, more growth, more noise. But out in the hollers, life moves on a different rhythm. Morning coffee on the porch. Neighbors waving as they pass. Friday night high school football. It's not glamorous, but it's grounded. Still, I can't ignore the hard realities. Addiction has left visible scars. Economic decline has thinned out main streets. You can drive through towns where half the buildings are empty. That emptiness tells a story too. But what I didn't see was hopelessness. I didn't see people giving up. I saw adaptation. Young men commuting long distances to work. Families doubling up in homes to cut expenses. Communities leaning on churches and local networks. It's not a perfect system, but it's a system built on connection rather than convenience. And that might be the biggest difference. In big cities, convenience is king. Everything delivered. Everything digital. In rural Kentucky, connection is king. If you don't know someone personally, you probably know their cousin. That web of relationships creates accountability. It also creates protection. And sometimes, it creates resistance to change. That's the trade-off. Tight communities can be warm. They can also be slow to evolve. But evolution is happening. You can see it in younger generations. They're online. They're learning. They're watching the world beyond the mountains. Some will leave. Some will stay and try to build something new. That's how regions reinvent themselves. Not overnight, but gradually. The story of Southeastern Kentucky isn't finished. It's mid-chapter. Coal was one chapter. Struggle is another. Reinvention may be the next. And the people living there right now are writing that chapter in real time. Quietly. Without headlines. Without spotlight. Just doing what they be. Always done. Holding on. Working hard. Protecting home. When people hear the phrase America's poorest region, they imagine one image. Broken homes. Despair. Nothing but struggle. But after driving those roads, I realized something important. Poverty is not the same as emptiness. You can have low income and still have full community. You can have limited opportunity and still have dignity. What makes a place feel alive isn't always money. It's purpose. And even in the quietest hollers, people had purpose. The older man cutting firewood wasn't waiting for rescue. He was preparing for winter. The young construction worker wasn't blaming the system. He was waking up early and driving an hour to earn a paycheck. The store clerk wasn't complaining about slow business. She was greeting strangers like neighbors. That's not a hopeless region. That's a region carrying weight. There's a difference. Still, the challenges are real. Healthcare access is limited. When there's no nearby hospital, emergencies become terrifying. Education funding struggles. When schools lack resources, kids start behind the starting line. Economic diversification hasn't fully arrived. When one industry disappears and nothing replaces it, the vacuum lingers for decades. And yet, life continues. Churches fill on Sundays. Local diners open at dawn. High school sports bring entire towns together. It's not flashy. It's steady. One of the biggest misunderstandings about rural Appalachia is that people don't want change. That's not true. They want opportunity. Who's done tea? Wanna lose identity. There's pride in the accent. Pride in the music. Pride in the land. When outsiders mock those things, walls go up. But when outsiders listen, doors open. I noticed that every meaningful conversation started the same way. Caution. Then curiosity. Then honesty. Trust builds slowly here. But once it's there, it's genuine. This region doesn't need to be romanticized. And it doesn't need to be pitied. It needs to be understood in full context. Yes, addiction has hurt families. Yes, economic decline has hollowed out towns. But no, the people are not defined by those things alone. They are defined by endurance, by loyalty, by attachment to place. As I think back on the trip, I realized something. Driving through southeastern Kentucky wasn't just about seeing poverty. It was about seeing complexity. A region shaped by industry, shaken by decline, and now standing at a crossroads. The story isn't over. It's evolving. And whether the next chapter brings new factories, remote jobs, tourism, or something completely unexpected, the people there will adapt. Because if there's one thing the mountains have taught them, it's how to stand firm. As the miles increase between me and the mountains, I started thinking less about what I saw and more about what I felt. There's a difference. You can see poverty. You can photograph empty storefronts. You can record statistics. But what you feel in a place is harder to explain. In Southeastern Kentucky, I felt caution, not hostility. Caution. People there have been talked about for decades. On the news. In documentaries, in political speeches. Often without anyone actually sitting down and listening. When you're constantly portrayed as a problem, you become protective. That protectiveness can look like distance. But underneath it, there's warmth. I saw it in small moments. A man offering directions, even though I could barely understand him. A store owner proudly talking about how long their business has been in the family. A young worker explaining why staying busy keeps him out of trouble. None of them asked for sympathy. None of them asked for charity. They asked for fairness. Tell it fair. That phrase from the church still echoed in my mind. Tell it fair. That means acknowledging the drug crisis without pretending it defines everyone. It means recognizing economic hardship without ignoring personal responsibility. It means admitting that industries collapsed, but also recognizing that culture didn't. Appalachian culture is strong. Music, storytelling, faith, family ties. Those things didn't disappear when coal declined. If anything, they became anchors. Another thing I noticed was how much people value independence, even when resources are scarce. There's pride in handling your own problems, fixing your own truck, heating your own home, growing your own food. That independence can sometimes look like resistance to outside help, but it's really about dignity. No one wants to feel dependent. At the same time, you can sense that people understand change is necessary. Younger generations are connected to the internet. They see opportunities elsewhere. Some leave, some return with new ideas. That's where transformation often begins. Slowly, quietly, without headlines. Driving through those hills reminded me that America isn't one story. It's a collection of regions with completely different realities. Urban and rural, fast and slow, opportunity-rich and opportunity limited, but none of them are one-dimensional. Southeastern Kentucky is not just poverty. It's history. It's resilience. It's complexity. And maybe the most important thing I learned is this. If you only look at a place through statistics, you miss its soul. The soul of those mountains lives in the people who choose to stay. And that soul is stronger than most outsiders realize. A few days after leaving the mountains, I was still thinking about something simple. Why does a place like this stay in your mind? It's not flashy. There are no skyscrapers, no world-famous attractions, no viral moments. But maybe that's exactly why it lingers. Because it's real. There's no filter on a town with one stoplight. No branding strategy for a gas station that's been there since the 70s. What you see is what you get. And what you get is raw America. I kept replaying the conversations in my head. The older generation talking about when coal was booming. The middle generation adapting to fewer jobs. The younger generation standing at a fork in the road. Stay or go. Build or leave. Protect tradition or chase change. That tension defines the region right now. It's easy to say, just move somewhere else. But moving isn't simple when your grandparents are buried on the hill behind your house. When your childhood memories are tied to creeks and gravel roads. When your identity is shaped by the land itself, leaving means more than changing an address. It means rewriting who you are. At the same time, staying requires sacrifice. Long commutes, lower wages, limited services. That trade-off is personal, and everyone I met seemed to be weighing it in their own way. One thing that stood out was how strong the sense of local identity is. People don't just say they're from Kentucky. Te site, ri. From a specific county, a specific holler, a specific stretch of land. That specificity matters. It creates belonging, but it can also create isolation. When opportunity doesn't match loyalty, frustration grows. Still, what I didn't feel was bitterness toward the country as a whole. I felt frustration at circumstances. but also pride and endurance. That's an important distinction. This region isn't asking to be rescued. It's asking not to be forgotten. Investment matters. Infrastructure matters. Access to healthcare and education matters. But respect matters just as much. Respect for culture. Respect for dialect. Respect for the fact that rural life isn't inferior. It's different. It's a test case. A test of how a country handles industrial decline. A test of whether small communities can reinvent themselves. A test of whether rural voices are heard or ignored. The story isn't finished. It's unfolding slowly, and the outcome will depend on both internal resilience and external support. But one thing is certain. The mountains are still standing, and so are the people. When I look back at the entire drive through Southeastern Kentucky, one image stands out more than anything else. It's not an abandoned building. It's not a closed coal plant. It's not even the winding mountain roads. It's a porch light glowing in the dark. That small light says something powerful. Someone lives there. Someone is building a life there. Someone is choosing to stay. From the outside, it's easy to measure a place by numbers. Median, income, unemployment rate, poverty percentage. But numbers don't tell you about the man cutting firewood before winter. They don't tell you about the grandmother raising her grandchildren. They don't tell you about the young worker driving an hour to stay away from trouble. They don't tell you about the church parking lot full on Sunday morning. They don't tell you about neighbors who know each other by name. Those things don't fit neatly into charts, but they matter. This region has been through cycles. Boom, bust, struggle, adaptation, and now uncertainty. The coal chapter built towns. When that chapter closed, the next one didn't arrive overnight. Communities were left in transition, and transition is uncomfortable. It exposes weaknesses. It tests patience. It reveals cracks in systems that once seemed stable, but it also reveals strength. Strength in staying sober when temptation is everywhere. Strength in working long shifts for modest pay. Strength in refusing to abandon family land. The story of Southeastern Kentucky isn't about despair. It's about endurance. It's about a region redefining itself without losing its identity. That won't happen quickly. It may take a generation. Maybe two. But history shows that regions can reinvent themselves. New industries, remote work, tourism, small business growth. It won't look like the coal era. But it doesn't have to, because the foundation is still there. Community, loyalty, resilience. As I finished this journey, I realized something simple. Forgotten doesn't mean finished. Struggling doesn't mean defeated. And poor doesn't mean without value. The mountains don't apologize for being rugged. And the people who live among them don't apologize for choosing a slower life. That choice may not make headlines, but it deserves respect. In the end, this drive wasn't about proving anything. It was about listening. Listening to people who rarely get the microphone. Listening without judgment and telling the story fair. Because every region has layers, and sometimes the quietest places carry the loudest lessons. A week after the drive, I found myself still replaying the quiet moments more than the dramatic ones. Not the warnings, not the statistics, not even the stories of loss. It was the pauses that stayed with me, the silence between mountains, the slow nod before someone answered a question, the way people looked you in the eye when they spoke. In fast places, conversations feel rushed. In the mountains, they unfold slowly, and that slowness changes the tone. You don't just ask questions there. You wait, you listen, you let people decide whether you're worth opening up to. Trust isn't automatic in Southeastern Kentucky. It's earned, and once it's earned, it's real. That realization shifted something in me. Maybe the rest of the country could learn from that. In cities, we share everything instantly. Online, public, filtered, but rarely deeply. Out there, depth matters more than speed. Another thought kept circling back. What does progress actually mean? In urban America, progress often looks like growth. More buildings, more tech, more people. In rural Appalachia, progress might look different. A new small business staying open for 5 years. A recovery center helping 10 people stay sober. A high school graduate returning home with new skills. It's incremental, and incremental progress rarely trends. But it's powerful. I also realized that while the region struggles economically, it possesses something many modern places lack. Continuity. Families who have lived on the same land for generations. Stories passed down face to face, not just online. Cemeteries where last names repeat across decades. That continuity builds identity. It builds roots, and roots are hard to measure in dollars. Of course, roots alone don't solve structural problems. Access to healthcare still matters. Reliable internet still matters. Job diversification still matters. Without those, younger generations will continue facing tough choices. Stay and sacrifice. Or leave and grow. That tension is real. But what I saw wasn't a region collapsing. It was a region adjusting. Quietly. Without fanfare. Without a national spotlight. As I sit now, miles away from those winding roads, I think about the phrase that defined the journey. Tell it fair. That means acknowledging hardship without exaggeration. It means recognizing pride without romanticizing struggle. It means understanding that places can be both beautiful and broken at the same time. Southeastern Kentucky is not a symbol. It's not a political talking point. It's a living, breathing community of people navigating change. And change, no matter where you are in America, is never easy. But if there's one thing those mountains made clear, it's that the people who call them home are not fragile. They're steady. And steady may be exactly what the future requires.